I'm Dory Sydock, today's service leader, joined by Brandon Martinez on AV and Sarah Dworzonsky, I apologize, for the kids program. If you can't already smell the delicious food, I'm sure you will about midway through the service. Everyone is welcome to stay afterwards and join us for a delicious Super Bowl lunch. Dr. LeGarrette King is joining us today to present Racial Literacy, Christianity, and History. Welcome members, friends, and visitors to UU of East Aurora. We are a community which believes our differences make us better. This is a place where all are welcomed regardless of belief systems, ethnicities, race, gender, sexual orientation, neurodiversity, or economic standing. We are in a safe space. Ours is a theology of connection. It has been said you just can't be a Unitarian Universalist alone. Brandon, how many people do we have on Zoom today? Hi, everybody joining us virtually. Welcome. If you're able to stand and greet the person next to you, say hello, take a quick minute for that. And if you're on Zoom, just say hello to each other in the chat. Okay, I'm going to start out announcements today. Yeah, come on, if you have an announcement, sure.
Okay, we're having an event here on April 8th. I think that's a Monday, Eclipse Day. Anyway, it's April 8th. And we got a big backyard. So we're going to have an event. Bring a chair, bring a snack. And get your glasses. You can pick them up at the library.
Rebecca?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Rebecca Whiteman. And two quick announcements. One is that we're not going to have an after service discussion group today because we've got Super Bowl Sunday luncheon. So, please enjoy that. And the other one is that we're going to be asking people in the future, able-bodied adults, to park over at Parkdale if they think our parking lot might fill up, because we've been exceeding the capacity of our parking lot. So to save that for families and people that need a shorter walk into the church. So if you could park at the south end of Parkdale, there is a sidewalk to Buffalo Road, whatever street is out here. So it's not too far to get. It's not too hard to get to it. Thanks.
Last week, Reverend Tina Simpson announced a new program she's offering here at UUEA. It's part of the UU Wellspring curriculum, and it's entitled Love at the Center, UU Values and Covenants. There's flyers about the program on the back bookcase, and there are a few spots remaining. If anyone's interested or if you have any questions, you can contact Reverend Tina. Are there any other announcements? I begin this service by acknowledging that our nation was largely built on the ancestral land of Native nations and the labor of enslaved peoples. May we persevere to achieve a clear understanding of our shared past and utilize these lessons learned for good and for progress. Please join me in saying the chalice lighting words. They're a little different today, written by Reverend Scott Taylor, inspired by the words of John Shar. They are printed in your order of service. May this flame cast its light toward better days, reminding us that the future is not simply a place we are going, but a place we are creating. The path of new possibilities will not be found, but made. The justice we long for does not sit at end of it lies in the bending that is ours to do. A new world is waiting to be built, friends. May our time together light the way. Thank you for doing that properly without my guidance. Our opening words today are by Yo-Yo Ma. Culture, the way we express ourselves and understand each other, can bind us together as one world. Our opening hymn, we have all of our hymns up on the screen today. There are words on the screen, but you can also find them in the hymnal. So our first hymn today is 131, Love Will Guide Us, and this is by Foothills Unitarian. If you'd like to stand and sing, you're welcome to. We don't have our hymn singers today. Each other. Sincere thanks to those who participate in events, volunteer their time, share their talents, or who are generous financially. If you're inclined to give after the service, there is a plate on the bookshelf in the back, or you may do so online at uuea.org. Now, this is the time in our program when we strengthen our circle of connection with each other by sharing our personal joys and concerns. Please know this portion of the service is not recorded. After bad weather and various plans were rescheduled, we are so pleased to finally welcome Dr. LeGarrette King to UUEA. Dr. King is an award-winning professor of Black history education at the University at Buffalo. He's also the founding director of the Center for K-12 Black History and Racial Literacy Education, a research and professional development center dedicated to improving K-12 Black history education and the understanding of race in classrooms. The center holds the annual Teaching Black History Conference, which attracts a few hundred educators from around the world. He's the author of over 60 research articles and 4 books. His most recent book, Teaching Enslavement in American History, was published in 2022. Dr. King is the recent recipient of the Spirit of America Award, which is bestowed to a person who has a distinguished national reputation as both an intellectual leader and public figure who's made important contributions to social education in the United States. Other award winners include Jimmy Carter, Rosa Parks, and John Lewis. He's married to Christina King and has 2 children, Preston, age 13, and Presley, age 10. Welcome, Dr. King.
I asked my kids if they wanted to come with me, and they were asleep. And they didn't really say too much. After that, I said, Meg should go to bed early so we can go somewhere in the morning, and they don't love me as much as I thought they did, so, it's all good. Well, good morning. I'm so delighted to be here, and thank you for being patient, with me. So I'm so dedicated and so delighted, and I'm so happy to be speaking with you all today, particularly for, I do believe, religious organizations need to have, a social justice impact, and I'm so, delighted to be here. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about racial literacy, Christianity, and history. And before I get to that, I just want to make my shameless plugs, right? As was mentioning earlier, I am the Center Director for the Center for K-12 Black History and Racial Literacy Education. Happy Black History Month. That's our annual Black History Month greeting card that we send to everyone, and you can see my staff here. Dr. Brittany Jones and Dr. Christina King, who's my wife there, are our assistant directors of the center, and down below you'll see our graduate fellows who help us do all the great things that we're doing in society. And as mentioned earlier, the center is a professional development and research center dedicated to improve the teaching of Black history, as well as help us improve our racial literacy throughout our country. So for those who are interested, our annual Teaching Black History Conference is held at the end of July, the 26th through the 28th. And our themes this year will be Black to the Future, which focus on this notion of Black history and the connection to the future and how we can use it to really learn about the past. Something really struck me while I was reading the agenda here, and noted that the future is not just something that we're going into, but it's something that we are creating, right? And the best thing is to kind of create and understand. For us to have a beautiful future is for us to kind of understand our history. As we always say these cute phrasings, we learn history not to repeat the past, but for some strange reason, we continuously repeat the past. So that means we do not know history. So for us to continue to make a better future, we really have to know the past. So, all right, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about this notion of race, right? Sometimes when I talk to people, or people always have these questions about why do we continue to struggle with the concept of race, racism, anti-Blackness, right? A lot of people believe, because of our history makes us believe that after the 1960 civil rights movement, that somehow race and racism was solved, right? Through various different legal aspects that occurred in our country, right? And a few years ago, right, a very short few years ago, right, Black Lives Matter, and anti-blackness and racism kind of dominated the lexicon in our society, right? And for some strange reason, because of political aspects, it's like people just all forgot about the whole things that they said in the summer of 2020 and gave up very easily. Oh, you got us, right? We got book bans. Oh, continue to do it. Oh, Black history is getting struck out of the classroom. Don't worry, we're not going to fight it, right? And which has become very disappointing for all the promises that was made during the summer of 2020. But it's not surprising. The same thing happened in the 1970s after the 1960s civil rights movement. The same thing happened in the 1930s and 40s after the gangs of the early 20th century. The same thing happened after the end of the Civil War and after Reconstruction. People just gave up and went back to the ways in which this country was founded based on the concepts of anti-blackness and racism, right? So, many people know that I have a Black history framework that is used in many different schools around the country, as well as in many different Black history textbooks that are used, particularly the new one by McGraw-Hill. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you know what I'm saying, you definitely can, scan the QR code to see kind of the descriptions of those particular principles. But today I'm going to focus on the principle of anti-blackness, oppression, and power. And I'm going to do that through the concepts of Christianity. Now, I want to warn everybody, I'm not a biblical scholar, right? All right, so some of you all may be way smarter than me in this particular, concept, or people who are watching the video later, all right? So if I get some words wrong or some little facts wrong or whatever, please excuse me. This is just the interest of a middle school boy whose mother used to read him biblical stories when he was a young child. And as I got older, I figured like, man, these biblical stories in many ways don't make any sense, or we need to expand on helping people really understand what's really going on in these stories. But they were beautiful stories as a child. But as I got older, I'm like, wait a minute, these dots are not connecting, particularly someone who believed that these biblical stories actually connected to world history. So how did race become something so profound in our country? And there's several different answers to that. But one of the answers is the concept of religion, right? And one of the answers came from the notions of the Bible. Now, the Bible is the most popular book in the world, right? Or at least in the U.S., right? Islam is the most popular religion in the world. But the Bible was very instrumental in helping us understand the concept of race and racism. The Bible, in many ways, were interpreted to justify the concepts of enslavement and race. And it's from our very popular story of Noah's Ark. Now, I'm sure we all are very familiar with Noah's Ark, right? Right? The concepts of Noah's Ark, beautiful story, kind of concerning story, right? Water destroying the world, Noah building the ark, bringing all these animals there, his family's there, whatever the case may be. But something has always kind of bothered me a little bit when I was a child and I didn't really understand. Well, if all this stuff happened, how do we have all these people in the world now, right? And so the concepts of racism in the Bible started from what the Bible has called, or what certain biblical scholars have called, the curse of Ham. In reality, it really should have been the curse of Canaan. Now, for those who do have the King James Version of the Bible, right, these stories come from Genesis 9, chapters 1 through 28, which it kind of explains how the world was repopulated. Genesis chapter 9:18 begins basically on Noah's descendants. So the water has ascended, the ark has landed, right? All the animals were released, and now you have Noah's family as the only people on the earth, right? According to the biblical scholar, the story. Now, the curse is focused on Noah and his 3 sons, right? Japheth, Ham, and Shem. Now, the story goes to say that after the flood has receded, I guess Noah's family was very excited to be off the ark. What it was, 40 days, 40 nights, right? Very excited to get off the ark, right? I guess they went outside and of course the Bible's very, very iffy on timelines and all this other good stuff. So I'm sure it was a few, years, 100 years afterwards or whatever the case may be. But for some reason, Noah became very excited and became drunk, right? Now, there's several different interpretations of this, right? But drunk was used within, the Bible that I have at my house. Now, he became really drunk and fell out, right? His son, Ham, right, saw him and called his brothers, Japheth and Shem, to come see what was going on. Now, during that time, it's very disrespectful because I think Noah was what was called naked, right? And so Ham was the person that saw him. Japheth and Shem covered Noah up in deference to their father. When Noah woke up and found out that Ham was the person who saw him naked, didn't turn away, he got very upset and cursed Canaan's son, cursed Ham's son, Canaan. All right. Now, as you can kind of see, there's different melanin on all these particular people here, right? I don't think we are, clear in terms of the Bible about racialized categories, right? Race really didn't become a thing until U.S.-based slavery, all right? So, people mostly connected more with ethnicity and nations versus kind of racialized character. But remember, the Bible was used to justify the concepts of enslavement. So, LeGarrette, what are you talking about? When Noah cursed Ham, Noah essentially said, Ham, you're going to be cursed, all your children are going to be cursed, and they're going to be the slaves of your 2 brothers. Now remember, these 3 people, Noah, remember they were in the ark, floods receded, they're the only people in the world. These were the people that repopulated the world, Noah's family, and they broke it up into 3 families of mankind. Japheth, whose family settled Asia and Europe. These were the people who were, quote unquote, light-skinned. In terms of mankind, these were the people who were responsible for the intellectual capacity of the world, all right? Asia and Europe. Shem, his family and all his sons and, other family members settled in settled in the Middle East. Jesus was a descendant of Shem, right? They had medium skin, and they're responsible for all of the spirituality that we have in today's society, right? So Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Now, Ham and his sons, especially his son Canaan, they were dark-skinned, and they settled on the continent of Africa. Now remember Noah's curse, because Ham saw Noah naked, was that Ham was going to be the slaves of his brothers and their people, right? So for Ham, his descendants were to serve the descendants of Shem and Japheth. Now, some people, and some scholars have said, well, serving can mean different things, right? These are the people who created things and based technology and invented things for these particular people to use, or whatever the case may be. But during the 16th, 17th, and 18th century, the enslavers during that particular time used to teach their enslaved people that they owned that they were the descendants of Ham and that they were naturally slaves. And that particular ideology of Christianity was passed along to the day that there are certain people in today's time that still believe in the curse of Ham. That black people who were the descendants of Ham should always be cursed, should always be enslaved or slaved in some type of form or manner, surveilled, right? We can look at enslavement in all different types of ways now, being surveilled. You need to be more human, need to be more cultured, need to be more civilized, right? And this all started based on the biblical story of after the ark. Noah, blessed by the Lord, my God, be Shem, and let Canaan be his slave and servant. God enlarged Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his slave and servant. The curse was used for the justification of slavery and racial hierarchy. It was used to explain black genetic inferiority, particularly intellectual inferiority. It began racist ideas. If you read this real good book, The Great Stain, it kind of explains how Christianity kind of served up this particular ideology. And the two favorite texts for the enslavers was Genesis 18 through 27, the repopulation of the earth, and then, of course, Ephesians 6, 5 through 7, when they talked about the notions of slaves be obedient to your masters. Usually these particular people ignored the New Testament, right? And of course, the curse of Ham was about the notions of civilizing those who were not to be civilized, which were the descendants of Ham. So if we think about it, descendants of everybody from the Middle East, Shem, Asians and Europeans, Japheth, and then Ham, all the dark-skinned people were supposed to be descendants of Ham. And that's how the world repopulated after Noah's Ark, right? So, and after all these things, Genesis, 1 through 28, and then they just skip 100-some years. You're just like, oh, I want to know more. I want to know more. I want to know more, right? About these particular aspects. But if you're ever wondering how certain parts of racialized thinking began, right? The church, Christianity, the Bible were very influential in beginning some of those racist ideas and racist beliefs. So I just wanted to introduce you to those particular aspects. Feel free to do your own research, read various different things, particularly for those who are really interested in, but I find it very interesting, particularly from those biblical stories my mother read to me while I was a child and became an inquisitive middle schooler during those particular things. Thank you. That's good? All right. I think that's it. All right. Good. All right. Thanks. You want questions or anything like that, or are we good? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Is Ham described as dark skinned in the Bible? I'm not
Yeah. So Ham is described as dark skin, light skin with Japaya, and then So if you kind of look at it in today's lenses, right? Asians are considered very smart, right? Europeans are considered, great civilizations, et cetera, et cetera. Japaya, light skin, Middle Easterners, the connection to the sacred spaces for Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Middle middle skin, folk from the Middle East or whatever the case may be, and then of course, Ham for Africa, and all dark skinned people. So those were the connections made for the three families of mankind. Yes. Mhm. Wow, that's a great question and a loaded question, right?
Repeat that question for people on Zoom, and I'll walk.
Okay, repeat the question. What is the biggest obstacle for ending anti-blackness and racism in our society? Yeah, moving forward. Oh man, that's a loaded question because so I'll take and this is not a political thing. I'm not really a big political person or whatever the case may be. So please don't get offended. Anybody in here, but it's so easy to just make up stuff against black people, right? And people are going to believe it because they want to believe it. That black people are a certain way. So let's take the CRT in schools debate and things that are taught by children. As someone who has been ruthlessly attacked by political conservatives, about those particular things. Like people just make up stuff and people just believe it, and it just becomes part of our national discourse before long, and just anybody can make that stuff up because black people are involved. I think the biggest thing is just really kind of understanding about how these racist ideas promote these current ideas, right? How systems are involved in restricting people based on race, class, sex, and all the isms around. So it is a hard thing, but as a professor, my whole thing is about knowledge. The more you know, the more you can spot, and then the more that you can kind of correct the BS that's taught in our society. Because it's so easy. It's just like everybody was gung-ho in 2020. It's just been 4 years later, and everybody kind of jumped off the boat and started believing all this stuff that bad faith actors started to say around the country, just for power and for an election. So. Yeah, and the punchline to all of this, it really wasn't done in schools anyway, like not in a widespread aspect. So for yeah, well throughout, I mean what I'm saying, just in the systemic aspect of it, it wasn't really in because since I actually visit schools, I'll probably say about maybe less than 5% of classrooms are really engaging in those particular types of conversations, and there needs to be more education around all those things. But it's an uphill battle. But my answer would be more education, right? So we can spot when people are kind of not being truthful, and so we can kind of push through that.
The AI, artificial intelligence, where we had an interview with Facebook on all this stuff up there. And there's going to be this legislation being passed to recognize that. And
Yeah, it's amazing, particularly with social media, how, just depending on what the algorithm says that you enjoy, everybody can learn so many different things and not nothing at all, right? So all our algorithms are totally different. So you'll learn something and you tell somebody like me and I'll be like, huh, what? I never heard that before, right? And same thing, right? So it's really a crazy thing. There was a time when we believed that people did people didn't know anything because we lacked a lot of information, and now we have a lot of information and people still don't know a lot of things, right? So it's a very interesting concept.
Back in the day when we were kids in school, or when I was a kid in school, history was history, period.
Hmm.
Didn't go anywhere, we didn't discuss racism, we did discuss what happened, maybe why it happened. So that just doesn't seem to be the case anymore, they're just not changing the curriculum.
Yeah, there's definitely a disconnect between history and present day, and I think if we can kind of connect those particular aspects, um, that'd be better. I think the biggest thing is for us to kind of understand what history actually is. People don't know what history actually is. History, in many ways, is about identity. It's about understanding who we are, and history is also the first time that we understand about other people, right? So if our so I joke all the time with parents because parents, say, "Man, my kids asking me all these questions," right? Well, the kids are being historians. They're trying to understand who they are. Mom, dad, tell me how tell me how I was born, where I was born. Grandpa, grandma, can you tell me how bad my mama was when she was my age? Type of deal, right? You know what I'm saying? Because they're really trying to learn who they are. So history is about our identity, but then it also helps us understand other people. So when our history curriculum lacks knowledge about half the country, we cannot be a great democracy if we don't know our history. And part of our history has been anti-blackness, racism, um, and all the isms out there. And it's very important for us to understand those so we don't continue to push those narratives as we, move the generations. So, many people believe that the younger people, each generation of younger people have tried to change those particular aspects, but we keep on falling for the same things over and over and over again to go closer back to how we were, before. So, yes, sir.
So I know you prefaced by saying you're not a biblical scholar, but so this Noah story way predates like Abraham and Isaac and all of that, right?
Yes, yes.
And so the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all descended from the tribes of Shem.
Yes, yes. According to my understanding, right?
So that's curious to me because there's so much division within just say those three religions.
Hmm.
So much division, so much violence, and so much what I see is like racial hatred, honestly, especially with what's going on in the Middle House.
Yeah.
And so my question for you is, do you think there's a fundamental difference between that sort of racism and tribalism, say within the descendants of Shem, if we're going through the story,
Mhm.
as opposed to the descendants of Ham,
Mhm.
which are like, do you think there's like a fundamental difference between those forms of like racism or tribalism?
Wow.
Far back?
Yeah, I do think divisions um, between the families happen all the time, right? For our Game of Thrones fans, what I'm saying, you can kind of see that through the video, the movies and stuff like that. But I can't answer that. I have no idea. But if I'm thinking through it, like, based on the story, um, it does seem that the religious aspects has a little bit more, tenor to it, but not right. The religious because all religions are kind of racialized many different ways, but you find different classifications of race depending on how you define it. But it's a powerful aspect for sure. So, but that's what I was talking about. It's like that chapter of Genesis just says all this stuff about the repopulation of the earth, and then they just move on. And you just have so many different questions. And I think it's picked upon, like, for somebody who was really listening, right? Like, half of us probably wasn't really listening. You just like the story. But, you know, for people that were really kind of listening and just really trying to make sense of it because you kind of believed it, right? You're like, okay, wow, okay. Because my mom taught me this is real. So I'm like, okay, if this is real, and being a history nerd, you know, since I've been little, I'm like, okay, wow, like what happened? Like what happened after that? Why did, you know, well, first of all, I think the first thing that scared my mom was, you know, when I asked, I said, well, were they having babies with their sisters or something? Like, you know, but you know what? She told me to be quiet and just believe. Uh, so, so I think that freaked her out, you know, whatever. But no. So, but great question. But I don't know how to answer that one. Yes, ma'am.
To throw politics into this, I learned that in colonial America, or our country, colonially, that racism was used to suppress the black population, so that the poor whites
Hmm.
would have someone. I was just wondering if you could.
Yeah. No, the Stone Oaks, you know, rebellion was a coalition between working class whites and enslaved and free black people during that particular time, and they, you know, fought to kind of not overthrow the government, but you know what I'm saying, just rebel against the government. And once that happened, there was this tendency to say, okay, so we have to really kind of make sure that even the poorest whites knew that they were better than, you know, even free blacks or wealthy blacks, right? So there was that thing. So if you think about the working class blacks during that time, they were the Irish, the Italians, you know, the less desirable white people, right, from Eastern Europe, right? So since they were the undesirables, what do you do with undesirables, right? You give them a sense of purpose. So now they're the overseers, right? So now they have some type of power. A lot of the overseers, you'll hear that they're like throughout history, the overseer, the slave catchers actually turned into kind of pseudo police type of aspects, and that's how kind of police departments you know, developed from those particular things. Particularly, you look at the, you know, the Northeast with the policemen who are normally Irishmen, right, or have Irish descent, right. That history spans back from all of that, right. So yeah, so I mean, but yeah, you know, working class whites, poor whites, which is a very underserved community in many different ways, like a forgotten community. Those communities and black communities historically have always kind of connected or should have had a more connection based on the same type of needs that they needed to be successful in this democracy. So yeah, Stone Oaks Pavilion.
A question on Zoom, and then
Yeah.
we're going to wrap up and talk to Dr. Singhal.
You know, but Jeanette asked, how is New York State doing with black studies? It's not as bad as Florida, but is it better than what it's done?
Yeah, good question. So New York State has a law called the Amistad Law, and the Amistad Law is a law that that says that all school systems should teach Black history education in their you know, classrooms. The Amistad Law is not very good in terms of their accountability, right? So there's several different places that are not adhering to the law. New York City, New York City schools, they're doing probably the best job, you know, in terms of that, because I believe they have Black studies all through schools from K to 12, and Buffalo Public Schools is probably doing a pretty decent job. But other than that, in terms of um, in terms of um, policies and such, right? Now, in terms of the action in the classroom, that's up for, you know, debate, and, you know, not a lot of data, you know, are in that, but really good question. Yeah. So New York, every school system is supposed to be teaching the African American history class, but I don't think that's being held accountable for that. So, all right. Thank you.
Okay, you know, I think we're going to skip the closing hymn. We'll extinguish the chalice and then do our postlude. So if you'll join me in reading the words from your order of service. This is called Justice and is Our Prayer by Reverend Rebecca Savage. We have come to the end of our service, but not our calling in the world. May we close our time together with a humble reminder that justice and equity are our spiritual practices to embrace. Each day, every day, we are blessed to be the embodiment of what is possible when justice and equity ground us in all that we do. May we go forth with the light and the warmth of the chalice in our hearts until we are together again. And the postlude is We Are Building a New Way, arranged and performed by Dr. Glenn Thomas Rideout from UU of Ann Arbor.